Good evening and welcome back to the Exceptional Conservative Show live from the nation's capital. I'm Ken McClinton, the host of the Exceptional Conservative Show. Today we have with us a tremendous guest in its own right, Madison Downs, who is running in the 3rd Congressional District in Virginia, the Big VA. And one of the great things about him is that he has not been ashamed about spreading the good news of conservatism, and he's doing it in a manner, in a way that is resonating with the people of Chesapeake and Newport News. Uh, Mr. Downs, I got to ask you here. It seemed for you an impossible thing. Everyone said there is no way that you're going to beat the Democrat stronghold there. And there's no way that any of the Democrat Marxists that have uniquely stronghold that area, uh, they're not listening to you. Can you tell them the endorsement that you received this week that says otherwise?
Sure. Yeah, we got an endorsement from the president. Basically, it's the "Make Virginia Great Again" endorsement, and what it's about is thank you so much. I was, I really wasn't expecting it. Apparently, some people from higher ups were have been, doing the research and following down behind our campaign, and it's a real blessing, and I'm humbled to have received this endorsement. And
Con-
basically, it's an endorsement for not just politicians but leaders that won't
yeah,
sell out the president, sell out for political convenience, or and it's going to really take the message and support the president and making sure that his agenda is completed.
now you mentioned that the president has been watching what's happening in Virginia Congressional District 3. I'm quite certain amongst like Congressional District 10 and a few other places that would have loved to have received that endorsement. You don't hand out an endorsement unless there's a winnable campaign. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I gotta just remind people that I'm not a career politician. And so I think that that's a part of the appeal to people. Just being, I'm a regular person just like everyone else. I work, work hard and provide for my family. I sweat and bleed the same way that they do. And so I think that what's happening is the way in which we espouse our message and foster our message to people is that we come across like an everyday people. I guess well, I don't guess, I know that my niche in life has been always to help others and to relate to people. So it's resonating with folks. We just meet people where they are, and just keep in mind that you know I didn't wake up and decide that I wanted to run for Congress. I was asked to run, by the people. So you know, the majority of my adult life, I've been helping people, and they asked me to help them out in this way. And I decided to make the sacrifice and to continue to sacrifice and to do what I could to help people in third.
Well, you have run a brilliant campaign for someone
Thank you.
who's running for the first time, and
Mhm.
in that particular district, to get the
Mhm.
president's observations speaks
Right.
volumes to what you've been doing.
Mhm.
Now, there are those who around the country who are looking at you and saying, Madison, I ran in those same districts. I ran as a hardcore Republican, conservative,
Mhm.
and I don't understand how come they're listening to you and not listening to me.
I think a big part of that is that when people decide that they're going to run for office or they want to appeal to people, the one thing that they do is they forget to be themselves.
Yeah,
They put up some sort of a facade. They make themselves out to be maybe something that they're not, and people can see through those things. With me, what you get. I mean, what you see is what you get. I'm not perfect. Um, one day I may be speaking philosophy with you. Next day we may talk theology. The next day I might just, you know, lay you out.
yeah,
I'm a regular person. And that has happened on the campaign trail,
Mhm.
so I think that those are the things that resonate with people. Not only that, but also, when you sit down and you talk to people, obviously they want to know what your background is, and once they actually understand where you're coming from, and being a native from the area, just knowing the people, um, there's a sense of community and hominess, you
Yeah.
know, that resonates with folks. So
Is there a sense that and I mean you could go into the same neighborhoods as maybe I believe it's Peter Sorelli who's running against you, um,
no,
and
no, no, not Peter Sorelli. There's a guy named John, and there's another guy named George.
George. Okay,
Yeah,
well, John and George, if they went into the same neighborhood and spoke,
they couldn't, they
thank you.
couldn't. And I'll give you a prime example of that. We had a debate that was set up for I believe it was last Tuesday,
Yeah.
and you know, one of the things that when you're used to helping people, not everybody's gonna, hit it off with you, you know,
Yeah.
and that's life. Some people are gonna like you, some people aren't. But for the most part, if you're used to helping people, you're able to touch people in their heart, and that is what's been happening. So we picked up a lot of supporters. Well, one of the supporters basically, the COVID-19 came down and the pandemic, and then there was a shutdown, so we couldn't be out and about with the people.
Yeah.
So we had to do everything virtually. So we set up the first. This was the first official debate that was set up, and it was supposed to be hosted by a DJ by the name of DJ Ronald Smith, and a friend of his who was also a pastor. Now, both of these were black men. Um, there's another guy who was a DJ who basically he's well known. He's been on the radio for over 20 years, and he's also a pastor. He has
Yeah.
a Christian ministry. So what he did was he created on his own a commercial that was advertising the debate. The great thing about this debate was it was the opportunity for us to be able to espouse conservative ideals, which basically resonate whether you're white or black, because
Yeah.
any black person will tell you that their families are just as or more conservative than most people in the country.
Yeah.
You know, so we were able to actually talk about our platforms to what was going to be a majority minority population or audience. Well, within this commercial, it depicted certain historical events. It had the KKK in it. It had JFK in it. It had Ronald Reagan in it. It had Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. And when they saw the KKK in the commercial, they backed out. They said it was offensive to them.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily think that that was the reason why, but they used that as the excuse. And it was the two other, John and George, got together. They made a joint letter and said that the video or the commercial was offensive, and they backed out for that reason. And there were maybe, I think it was about three committee members that actually signed a letter um,
Wow.
stating that it was offensive to them. But that wasn't the most egregious thing about it. What happened before then was there was a group of people, some of the young Republicans, not the whole group,
Yeah.
just a small portion of them, because I know that the young Republicans work hard, and I know that they support their candidates once they're nominated. So, it's not the whole group, but there are a few of them there that took issue with the DJ and then began to slander his name. Now, this guy is very
Wow.
popular. So what they did was basically they spit in the face of the black community and
Yeah.
other minorities. So, and I know for a fact, because, I'm in Newport News, that none of the other candidates have been there. They may have
Wow.
been to maybe a Newport News Republican committee meeting, but that's on the other side of town, where there aren't many minorities. They may have been to Portsmouth Republican meeting, but there aren't any minorities there. So they don't have a message for the minority community, and that right there is going to lose the race for them, just from start. So,
Exactly.
yeah, and now with the word out in the street is that they don't even want to hear what they have to say. So, yeah,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
And see, that's the unfortunate thing. Leaders are trained to run towards the fire. They're not
right,
told to run away from the fire. You face what's coming
right,
towards you. You do that on a daily basis. You are not
right.
only a teacher, but a preacher and
Mhm,
a great civic leader in your community.
mhm,
My first question to you regards education.
mhm,
And you have a governor who has shut down the schools. Uh,
mhm.
and I just want, in all earnestness, of all areas to shut down public schools. Would Newport News and Chesapeake be those particular areas? What are the issues that are raised after this particular lockdown regarding education in your congressional district?
Well, as long as things. Well, first of all, I completely disagree with the shutdown. I think that it is a direct violation of our Constitution, both state and U.S. Constitution. It's a tyrannical move, and I'll speak against the fact that there were codes and statutes that were signed or bills signed into law while we still have a dysfunctional government. And what I mean by that is we don't have a checks and balances in the government. We only have the executive branch and the legislative branch that are working right now, and no judicial branch. It's supposed to open up tomorrow, but I'm not sure if it got extended or not. But there should be no bills being signed when we don't have a fully functioning government, where we
Yeah,
don't have checks and balances. Now, speaking to the issue with the education, there hasn't been adequate. I know that teachers have been teaching virtually, and that's good, but we don't have a good system set in place whereby we can make sure that students are attending school
yeah,
the way that they're supposed to. We're not sure about the actual tutelage of the students. It's one thing to turn on a YouTube and try to figure out how to put a desk together or a bicycle together, but when it comes to trying to figure out algebra or trigonometry, those are apples and oranges. So there's definitely something that needs to be done there, and that's actually right up my alley because one of the things that I used to help people out with was I actually helped families pull their students out of the public school system for various reasons
hmm,
and help them set up homeschooling. And there's a system that we can use that is connected to universities, and whether it be Liberty University or whatever the case, there are systems that are set up that actually help families out, parents out, with that tutelage that I'm talking about. The public school system is not set up for that right
yeah.
now. We are looking toward it though, and I think that we'll master it. But and because there's no telling what's going to happen. If it'd be my guess, if you go back, I predicted that everything that we're seeing that's happening today, I
Hmm.
predicted it back in January. I thought
Wow.
everybody was everybody was concerned about the 2A, and that's
Hmm.
all they were concerned about. And I can remember I gave a speech at the Norfolk City Council meeting where I talked about these codes and statutes that directly violate our constitutional rights, and that we were going down this slippery slope. I predicted that this was going to happen, and so here we are. So,
Well, your victory would be looked upon quite well in the third congressional district when it comes to the issues of homeschooling and charter schools and independent
mhm,
schools. But
right,
here's a question that people here in Washington D.C. and you know where I live. As an educator, you know what we face here. When
oh
I
yeah,
stated that if you're asking single mothers to give up going back to work so that they can
mhm.
homeschool their children, should they not receive a portion of the financial aid that goes directly to the public schools, since the public schools are not necessarily doing all that they're required to do?
That's a good question. And if just off the top of my head, I would, just arbitrarily have to say yes. And the
Hmm.
reason why is because schools are funded through attendance.
Yeah,
And if the child is in school for, say, 4 hours out of the day, then they get the full funding for that day for that child. I think it's something like $12,000 per head.
yeah,
And people are not aware of how schools are actually funded. So, if the school is putting, a portion of the work, but the majority of the work is at the home, then that money should be funneled more toward that household. So that does make sense. It's something that I have to take another, do a deeper dive, and take a
exactly.
look at.
But
But
because you
it does make
know,
good sense.
you know what the student union, the teachers unions are going to say about that. That these parents are not educated, and we get paid because we have degrees on the wall. Is that
Mhm.
alone how funding is done in terms of education of the public schools?
Are you asking that? Because of people that have the degrees, is that
Yeah, because
how the
they
schools are
have
funded?
degrees, they have the privilege to receive the whole of the financial aid from the federal and the state governments,
Oh
while
no,
the
that's not.
while the teacher at home doesn't deserve any of that money because they haven't gone through the educational system to achieve the degrees and things of that nature.
No, yeah, that wouldn't work because basically the monies are paid through taxpayers, tax
Yeah,
money. You see what I'm saying? So it'd be something different if it was a private company or a private school. So then you can make the argument that okay, so teacher A, B, or C went to school and they paid however many thousands of dollars, and so therefore the salary should be this much. But when you're talking about tax dollars, you throw that all out the window. You know,
exactly.
the simple fact that this person is paying taxes and this person's tax dollars are paying for this particular education. It doesn't matter the education of their child is what I'm talking about. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter if the child has a GED or a doctorate. You know,
Yes.
we're talking apples and oranges now. So
Hmm.
uh, one thing has nothing to do with the other. To be honest with you.
Exactly. Now, in terms of the constitutional right to assemble, to worship, um,
Mm-hmm.
my critique, while a portion of it is against Governor Northam and Mayor Bowser and Governor Hogan and the rest of the tyrannists,
Right.
my greatest condemnation has been against those pastors because at the beginning of our country, churches were looked upon as leadership in terms of public policy. I've said
Mm-hmm.
that pastors should, en masse, go back to church and basically open up their own church doors. Am I coaxing people into some type of civil unrest in saying so?
No, I don't think so. I think that, and so far, I think that that's a judgment call based upon that pastor, and that pastor should know his flock, should know his people. You know, now I think the greater issue is the fact that we have people who are in positions of power who are not on their oath.
Yes.
So they are creating these codes and statutes that directly violate Constitution. So one of the things that I would do when I get to Congress is uh, put together legislation and sponsor a bill. And part of sponsoring the bill means that you are able to influence your colleagues, to go along with you. So basically,
Yeah.
anybody who would sponsor a bill or who would vote for a bill that directly violates Constitution, that legislator needs to be investigated, tried, and convicted of treason against the people for violating his
Wow.
oath.
Dude,
So I mean,
I
we need
love
to get
you.
back. Yeah, yeah, we need to get back to Constitution. I mean, this is very serious.
Yeah.
Our constitutional rights have been being violated for a very long time, but it's been, just a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit here, and people have said, okay, well, it's not really affecting me. But now look at where we are. So when you're
Exactly.
talking about the right to assemble, or you're talking about the right to go to church, these are direct violations against our constitutional rights. And for anyone who has taken an oath that they would uphold the Constitution, support the Constitution, or defend the Constitution, and then for political convenience get into office and directly violate the Constitution, that is a traitor, not only to the Constitution but to the people. And oftentimes people forget that the fourth branch of the government is we the people.
There you
So we
go.
need to make sure that we are on our oath at all times, and that we are looking out for the people first. And we see this. This cluster of legislators get together, and you look at the stimulus packages, the two
Yeah.
trillion, then another 2 trillion, then they're just printing money out of thin air. And each and every time when they go and they come up with these stimulus packages, what are they doing? They're bailing out these big corporations and banks. Well, the banks are making how many billions per quarter? Why do they need to be bailed out? And then
Yeah.
the small businesses, the people who are struggling, there's no help for them. Oh, we're going to give you $1,200. And look, you're not giving people anything; it's their money in the first place. And there's no business that's too large to fail. Let's get that straight. So
Yeah.
stop bailing them out. If you got a small business owner and that business owner can lose everything, then so can that big guy up there. So
Exactly.
you need to get back to Constitution, making sure that people are first.
Madison, I'm going to
Let
have you
me
come back.
let me take that a step further.
Yes.
We need to make sure that it's Americans first. Americans first.
So
Because
you would vote tomorrow if you were in Congress. You would vote against Nancy Pelosi's stimulus package, which would give $1,200 of stimulus paid directly to illegal migrants in
no,
our country.
yeah, absolutely. For what? We got Americans hurting. We got vets hurting. We got families hurting. We got small businesses that need help. And you're talking about immigrants and aliens.
Hmm.
That is absolutely crazy. That's like the governor handing out driver's license to illegals, or they're trying to give the country away. These people need to be tried. They need to be convicted. They need to be thrown in jail.
There you go.
They are trading. They are betraying the people, and it's time for them to go.
Madison Downs is finally saying things that our communities are resonating with, and a staunch imposition of the law against the lawbreakers known as politicians needs to take place. Madison, how can people support you? How can they get in contact with you? You got a primary in what, about a month or so? How can they get? How
Yeah.
can they help you?
Okay. Well, listen, we're trying to grow the Republican Party. Okay. So my message resonates with if my message resonates with you. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. You need to vote for Madison Downs on June 23rd. Okay, because I'm the only person that's going to fight for you. I'm the only person that's going to put Americans first. I'm the only person that's going to institute legislation that's going to put these people who violate our constitutional rights in jail. That's me. You can support me if you go to Madison for Hampton Roads. It's www Madison for Hampton Roads. Or if you're on Facebook, you can go to Madison Downs for Congress. And when you go there, if you go to the website, you click the donate or contribute tab. Give us $5, $10. If you're feeling really generous, 100, 150, 500. Every little bit helps. We've got a mountain to climb. Mr. Scott has been there for 3 decades. He's only pushed maybe 3 pieces of legislation. Only 2 of them passed, and I think one of them was to rename a post office or something like, or some building. So there's
Heavy
nothing that
lifting.
he's been doing, yeah, other than fish fries and cookouts, and it's time that the people's work gets done.
Ladies and gentlemen, Madison Downs. We're going to have him back a couple of times before June 23rd. His message resonates to those young and old, black and white, Jew and Gentile. It is a message that says liberty and freedom and justice for all in America. And certainly it is good news not to have to support someone who would support funding illegal aliens.
That is
He
absolutely.
is definitely against that. And if you are independent as well, some of you all say, well, I switched away from the parties and, party I don't like. I understand that. but Madison Downs represents that same flavor for the independent. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, there's another thing that's on my radar too that's really befuddling to me. There's something called the J1 visa, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. But what it does is you have American doctors who are trained, they've got the degrees, but they're being looked over for foreign doctors. A lot of Americans aren't aware of this. That we have foreign doctors who are taking the jobs of American doctors. This has to stop. Imagine what would have happened if there were more American doctors and not foreign doctors. Would we be being hoodwinked about this pandemic?
Wow.
Would more American doctors speak up on behalf of Americans? So these visas that are bringing in these foreigners that are taking American jobs, this needs to stop. It needs to be American first, and that's not necessarily a cry about national. You call it whatever you want to, but this is our country, and we need to take care of our people first. We don't let people come into our house and eat up all our food.
There
You
you,
never do that. You
there you
take care of
go.
your family first. And so I just want to put that out there. So I know a lot of people aren't aware that that's happening. I'd much rather go to an American doctor because I feel like they're going to take care of me than a foreigner will. So
Yes, exactly.
just,
As long as it's not Dr. Fauci.
right. Ah, boy, come on. Yeah.
ladies, ladies and gentlemen, Madison Downs, what a tremendous patriot, endorsed, received a major endorsement, MAGA endorsement this week. Definitely his voice is being heard all the way to the White House. This is definitely a winner. Madison Downs. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Madison, thank you as well. Listen, we look forward to coming back to you right after this commercial break. Stay tuned for more of the best in urban conservative talk. In the second hour, we have Dave Mendel, the unpleasant blind guy. That's going to be fun.